now. Here we go. Little line going across the screen. This is where I check.
We're live on YouTube. All right.
We're live on YouTube.
I'm going to share my screen. Did I share the right one?
Yep.
Good. All right, now you need to let the participants in, Dave.
Live. I will let the participants in. Here we go.
No fear.
Broadcast.
Like a shepherd on his flock.
Here we go. Here they come. I did do it. Yep. Here we go. I can see the numbers going up.
Hello, everyone.
One attendee. Oh, there we go.
Hello, one attendee.
I was like, we have one attendee.
Awesome. Oh, they're rolling in now.
Here we go.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, everyone, indeed.
All right. Well, while people are rolling in, g'day. Welcome to Morning Startup, online and virtual once again, but hopefully not for much longer. I think this may be our last virtual session, and next, or in 2 weeks' time, we might be heading back to RIF, given that they're easing restrictions here in Perth, or in WA, so that's pretty exciting. See you all again. I don't think we can shake hands, but maybe an elbow bump or something like that. We
can do the Vulcan one, can't we? That's what the Vulcans obviously saw it in the future. They have the Vulcan handshake, so we could do that.
That's going to be cool. All right, well, we'll get underway. So yeah, welcome to Morning Startup once again. If you haven't been to Morning Startup before, it's run by myself. I'm Scott Glue, one of the organizers. We've also got Dave Newman here online, as well as Robbie Nolan.
Good morning.
We have royalty with us today, don't we? We have Iain.
Royalty.
So we have Iain from Humm. Those of you who know him, I've been looking forward to this session to kind of hear the ins and outs of how we went through and how the team went through the SkyDeck, the Berkeley SkyDeck Accelerator over in San Francisco or over in Berkeley. So we've got royalty with us today.
Thanks, Dave.
Welcome. We've also got Brian here as well, who said Brian's going to give us a little, give us an intro into SkyDeck. But first of all, if you want to hit that button, Scott.
Let's do it. Oh, okay. Forgot about that. Introductions and shameless plugs. So if you, feel free to introduce yourself. We've got a chat section in Zoom. Just throw a little message in there and say g'day. And if you've got anything you'd like to shamelessly plug about your business, please go ahead, throw some links in there and drum up a bit of interest for whatever you're working on. That would be great. But yeah, let's start with this. So
I want to just ask a question, okay? Raise your hands if you've watched YouTube recently and you've seen a certain local marketing firm advertising on YouTube. Have you not seen this? Have you not been on YouTube? Every single advert that I get on YouTube is ammo. So if you are looking for to help with your startup and you're looking for to grow and the growth mechanisms and that and the pirate metrics and whatnot, then hook up Cam and his team at Ammo. I know they're doing a fantastic job. I know that my marketing it's working for me because every time I seem to go on YouTube, I've got a ammo advert coming up of Cam walking through the office. So it's literally every single one. I met one of the camo teams at a quick kind of a minor sundowner on Friday night, and he said, just don't click on the link, don't click on it because we get charged. But every other advert is ammo at the moment. So
there you go.
Thank you very much for the merch as well. The merch works well. And yeah, if you're looking for some marketing help in that, then hit up Cam and the team at ammo.marketing.
I second.
Yeah. So don't click on their links, but go to ammo.marketing and also find your way to the Weird Growth podcast. And if you haven't heard enough about what Iain and Humm are doing at the end of this, you can go back to one of their previous episodes and there's an awesome interview with Iain and Cam on there as well. And so I know SkyDeck, Iain, is one of your secrets of success so far, but ammo as well, right?
Ammo as well. Yeah, I work especially closely with a young man, Jack Hallam, and Cam as well. And for the longest time, they've been incredibly helpful in helping us do like really organic, step-by-step, rational building of our marketing, even though we have a really small budget for that kind of thing at the moment, with being in R&D still. Can't recommend them highly enough.
Fantastic.
Right.
There you go. So get on Ammo. Thanks, Ammo. Thanks for your help running Morning Startup. And also in my letterbox last night, thank you, Glenn, for dropping off this stubby holder.
So you've got the newer version.
Got on the merch train. So yeah, Beecham Group. They are a boutique. Can't speak today. A boutique recruitment company here in Perth. So if you are looking for talent, or if you are talented and need a gig, please hit up beechamgroup.com and they'll happily help you out. It is very well connected. But if you are actually a really, really awesome front-end developer, don't worry about Beecham Group. Just contact me directly, scott@fastview.co. We're looking, but no, Beecham Group, do it. Sorry, I have to abuse my position here. Oh dear. Anything else about Beecham Group, Robbie?
Yeah, well, I suppose Glenn is probably one of the most best networked people in the IT sector in Perth. So if you're looking for inside introductions, if you're looking for an idea about how you can get to where you want to go in your career in IT, reach out to them as well. And imagine they're very well positioned given what's all the turmoil with going into recession and COVID and everything else. Those type of networks prove very valuable in times like these. So certainly reach out to Glenn and the team if you're looking for help.
Absolutely.
Completely agree. So big advocates of them. So I want to give a shout out to, I will do startup news and business news at the same time. So if you are a startup here in WA and you're looking to get exposure to some high net worths, then give business news a shout out. They'll give you a quarter page spread in business news, basically telling the world what you are doing and how you're solving your problem. And then over to startup news, which is an amazing blog or website that every Friday night you get an email come out with the latest news from WA coming out in it, and massively important, keeps us up to date. Charlie, Patrick and the team, a big shout out to them for keeping that going. I love when I get my Friday afternoon news of what's going on. It kind of just keeps me up to date of what's happening in the ecosystem. So it's super important that we support these guys.
Absolutely. By the way, I was just looking at the chat, guys. If you do have a shameless plug or an introduction or something, just make sure you hit the to all panelists and attendees option, because some of them are just coming through to the panelists. So I want to make sure everyone that's joining can see your shameless plug. So yeah, all panelists and attendees. So you've done startup news and business news. Spacecubed. We all in Perth know about Spacecubed. We've been running Morning Startup at Riff for the last, nearly 9 years now. But they also have another place down the road called Flux, which I'm sure you're all aware of. And they also run a bunch of programs to help your startup achieve success, from Plus 8 to the sprint programs to a whole bunch of stuff. So get online to spacecubed.com, and if there's any shameless plugs for Spacecubes or any programs, please put them in the chat. Spacecube people, if you're in the attendees list there.
I'll let you do tech board, and then I'll do niche and voltage.
All right. So techboard, techboard.com.au. Please get on there and claim your company's profile. And if you have anything to announce it on techboard. So hey, we've just done a new hire, or we've just raised a round, or anything, just put it on techboard, and that will go out to their sort of investor heavy focused audience. So really a great platform for Perth startups and Australian startups in general as well, especially if you're looking at raising money or just getting that touch point happening with investors early on. So get on techboard and start getting your announcements out.
And if you're looking for some great content to watch on how to sort of from growth hacking to various different presenters, then check out nicheinterview.com. We had Jürgen on a few weeks ago talking about low code, no code. Great session. Go to nicheinterview.com and you'll see sessions from people like Michael Molson from Rate It App, and lots of great kind of founders on there sharing their stories of how you can kind of maybe shortcut the mistakes that a lot of us make on this journey. And last but definitely not least, and the reason I've left it to last is maybe, Scott, we can say the next morning startup will be in person. So this is the last online one. So like we've saved the best to last, Brian and Iain. But yeah, if you, the next one, I hope to see a queue outside Voltage Espresso. Okay, so basically Voltage Espresso, if you haven't had their coffee, then you really haven't, you haven't experienced some of the best coffee in town. Go across, see them. Normally in a normal world, we'd say morning startup, you get a discount, but I'm just going to say pay full price. Buy 2 of them, buy everybody else in their coffee as well, buy some of their snacks. Let's support Voltage. They've been great for us for the 9 years that we've been going here, and we quite frankly love them to bits. So I hope everybody, in fact, we should make a pact that at 7 o'clock 2 weeks from now we should all meet outside Voltage and all grab our coffees. Okay, so
I like it.
Who's joining me? Raise your hands if you're going to join me in that one. I will be.
Well, I'll be there. 7 a.m. might be a bit early for all the audience because we have to get there and set up and everything. But yeah, if you can, 7 a.m. grab a coffee.
7 a.m. So on the next one, click the button then, Scott.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, I've got a couple of announcements here that I've prepared earlier. So West Tech Fest, it's obviously the big conference that happens at the end of the year. We're tracking really well in WA to keep this going at the moment. So this is good, but please save the date. So 30th of November to 6th of December, there's going to be a range of events happening in Perth. I believe they're doing it at Optus Stadium this time around. And I'm not sure if they're doing Roto Tech Fest. There's going to be a ton of stuff still to be announced because everything's still up in the air a bit, as you can imagine. But yeah, those are the dates. So make sure you're not going anywhere. Stay in Perth, at least for those dates. I know everyone's probably itching to get out, but yeah, that's going to be good. But in the meantime, I'll leave this slide on for a while so that you can copy down this hard to remember bit.ly URL, because that opens up an even harder to remember Zoom registration URL. Casing matters as well. Make sure you get your capital N's and V's. But this is a fireside chat that's happening this Friday, the 26th of June. It's 8 a.m. Perth time. It's also at a decent hour in the US if you guys want to join in as well. But it's a fireside chat with our very own Cliff Obrecht from Canva and Bill Ty, so one of the early investors into Canva as well. So that's going to be a fun fireside chat to get around. So yeah, bit.ly/that. I really wanted to create a nicer, easy to remember one, but I didn't. So yeah, get around it. Any other announcements?
I don't have any announcements. Just trying to think. I sent out a message re the Ferment, which is the WA system, the South Australian Wine Tech conference. What I think we'll do, Scott, is we'll put this link and all the other ones into an email and we'll send it out. Yeah,
sure.
that'd be good.
Sounds good. Oh, just an update from Rowan. Maybe not Optus Stadium for West Tech Fest, but a city venue to be advised. Roto Tech Fest is definitely on though. Cool. So that's good. Thanks, Rowan.
I've got a quick one. Just following up on Jürgen's no code, low code presentation a few weeks ago. Myself and my business partner, Chris, have been playing around with Bubble, which is one of the platforms that he highly recommended to get into this whole world. So bubble.io. They're actually starting doing, what they call summer boot camps, because obviously they're based in the US. So there's like 8-week boot camps up there for anyone who is a non-coder, non-tech person whatsoever, but might have an idea. It's actually pretty good. Like I think they're only class sizes of 8 people online. And they go through the whole suite of tools that you can use. So within 8 weeks can get you up to speed on how to use those kind of solutions. We're taking a serious look at it as well and trying to free up time to do it. But looks get you from zero to hero on a no code, low code solution if you want to build out some tech platforms online yourself.
Okay. Any others? Any other slides?
Yes. We go with this one. So this event that's been put on today, there's been a whole bunch of people that have sort of come together to organize it. One of those is Innovation Central Perth. So if you haven't heard about that, it's basically an industry and research collaboration center run out of Curtin University. And they've got a range of services that can help startups, from resources to events to spaces and things. So if you haven't heard about them, please go to icentralau.com.au/Perth And there's a couple of email addresses too if you want to know more. So thank you, Innovation Central Perth, West Tech Fest, and Plus Eight as well for helping us put on this event today.
Yeah.
That is it from my slides.
I'm going to, before we get into the presentation, one last thing. I'm just going to launch a poll. And what I want to do is I just want you to answer the first question. Okay, so everyone that's watching, I just want you to answer the first question, and then at the end of it, I want you to answer the second question. Okay, so I'm just going to hit the go now. So it'd be interesting to see how this goes. And I'll just minimize it to your screen, and then we can go from there. But yes, without further ado, I think we should introduce our guests, Brian and Iain, all the way from, I'm going to assume you're both in Berkeley. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Excellent. And I get jealous, Iain, when I see those views from your, like, I don't know what to call it, like this mansion on the hill overlooking Berkeley, and that I can't imagine where it is. One day I hope to kind of get across there and see it, but it's just that for those of you who know Iain, it's just some of the most fantastic views across the bay there, and especially some of the views from the SkyDeck. So Brian and Iain, I'm going to say the floor is yours, gentlemen.
Yeah, well, what I thought we could do today, and Iain, we didn't really touch base too much on this, was I could go over the SkyDeck presentation, talk a little bit about kind of a high level of the program. It'll take probably about 10 minutes, ask some questions away, and then we can together, Iain, probably go over some of those questions, and then maybe afterwards as well, have you kind of provide some more of your context and experience working with SkyDeck, if that works.
Yeah. So maybe there's some people who don't know about Humm or SkyDeck at all in our relationship. But before Brian tells you about SkyDeck, so my company Humm started in Perth and went through the SkyDeck program as one of the cohorts. So SkyDeck's one of our investors, and then we went through the accelerator and got a lot of support, built a network out of SkyDeck. So to put into context what Brian's telling you about, I've lived this, and I'm happy to answer questions about it, and can probably stand by everything Brian says. Depends what Brian says. That's all I'll say.
It's always roll the dice. That's what I'll say. Sounds good. Well, I'm going to share my screen and get things started here. And I'll try to run through this relatively quickly. There we go, present. Great. Well, thanks today for taking the time. Today I thought I'd talk about Berkeley SkyDeck and the Global Founders Program, which really aims to be, and I would say at this point really is, the global hub for entrepreneurship inside of Silicon Valley. And the view you're looking at is a view of Berkeley right there. So, what is SkyDeck? Really, there's two major organizations when you think about SkyDeck. There's the Berkeley SkyDeck Accelerator, which is the program run by Caroline Winnett on the left. It was established by the Dean of the Engineering School, the Dean of the Business School, and the Vice Chancellor of Research about 8 years ago. Has put 300 to 500 companies through its doors in that time, and has really built out a strong, robust infrastructure. The SkyDeck Fund, which is where I work, is managed by Chong Tain. We're the partner investment firm of the SkyDeck Accelerator. We deploy $105,000 into everyone that goes through the program. And we share half of our profit back to the school. And we're kind of a privately backed fund, backed by other funds like Sequoia Capital, Mayfield Fund, Canvas Ventures, Sierra Ventures, and more. On a high level, and we'll dive into some more details here, but on a high level, what is SkyDeck? In addition to this kind of $105,000 of investment that each of our teams receive, it's a 6-month accelerator program really designed to help early stage companies establish a presence inside of Silicon Valley. And these companies typically are looking to come through our program and then raise $2 to $5 million. That's kind of the relative goal of the program that both ourselves and the co-founders kind of align upon. That's what we want to help our companies get to. And we really offer direct access inside of Silicon Valley through the collective resources of UC Berkeley. And I'll talk about what makes Berkeley unique, but we kind of really leverage this pre-built brand, pre-built network that's been in the Valley for 150 years, from far before it was called Silicon Valley. And we utilize that network for the success of our companies. So what does Silicon Valley really have to offer? I'm a big believer that You can start a great company anywhere in the world right now. It's never been easier to get a company launched in Perth or Buenos Aires or Mexico City or London. And I think it's, in many ways, it's a better place to start a business. But what Silicon Valley has to offer is, give me one quick second. Hey, Alex, could you do that later? Sorry about that, just some dishes in the background. What Silicon Valley really has to offer is an unparalleled funding ladder. And I think that's kind of obvious when you kind of look inside from the outside, but what does that really mean? It means tens of thousands of angel investors, hundreds of pre-seed firms, hundreds of seed firms, hundreds of A firms, hundreds of B firms, hundreds of C firms, all in a pretty dense location. I mean, it's not all San Francisco. I mean, San Francisco itself has a population, I think, of 800,000. The Bay Area itself is about 8 million, about 50 kilometers in radius, and it's all pretty dense there. And due to, I think, a lot of these investors, they take a larger risk tolerance and offer generally more favorable deal terms than you're going to get in other locations. And the founders here, I think, just become immersed in an ecosystem that, I hate to say, has nothing better to do, but like everybody here is focused on technology. You know, you walk into any coffee shop, there's 5 founders working on their businesses. You know, 90% of people, you know, probably working outside of government are working either in tech or, I mean, outside of government and maybe services, or working inside of tech or some sort of tech auxiliary business. So it's just kind of this density. And I think because of this density, I think people are very used to helping founders, used to working with startups. Nobody knows who the next Google is going to be. So I think people in general are just very helpful with their networks and very collaborative here. And that's kind of been built through generations of, you know, funding and raising rounds and exits and kind of repeating that cycle. You know, what makes kind of Berkeley special in the ecosystem? You know, I think there's a couple things that really makes Berkeley unique. I think one, it has a very large alumni network, about 500,000 alumni, and Berkeley is a major feeder school to, you know, every Fortune 500 company, to nearly every company in Silicon Valley that's past the Series A probably has a Berkeley alumni in it. We are the biggest feeder school of talent to this region, and have a long history of kind of shaping the startup ecosystem and research ecosystem here. You know, all the way up to, I mean, early companies like Apple. Steve Wozniak's a Berkeley alumni, and you kind of just keep going down the list, and you'll see that there's really Berkeley alumni who were early employees or co-founders of nearly every major startup in the Valley. We have a nice undergraduate and graduate school that our teams will often kind of tap into for access to talent, access to resources, and I kind of mentioned this proximity. I'm going to run through this quickly and we'll have time for questions, so feel free to go through that. We'll go through that later. Typically, what type of companies are we looking for? I mean, we're not really looking for a lot of ideas. I mean, maybe Humm came to us in some form of idea, but typically speaking, our companies are 6 months to 3 years old. They probably have some kind of customer traction, and this could be unpaid LOIs, unpaid pilots, this could be paid pilots, this could be monthly revenue, anywhere from 3K to 40K a month in revenue. So it's a pretty large range. Again, that I think companies come to us at different stages. They're aiming for that goal of how do I raise $2 to $5 million from investors out here. Typically, they have some kind of interesting or innovative technology built or early studies done if they're more kind of in that life science space. And we're probably the first investors in maybe 40% of our companies, but many of our companies have come through having already raised 50K, 100K, 300K, even up to really $1 million before the program in private funding, and sometimes more than that if you think about public funding as well. It's kind of the typical SkyDeck application. Probably 80% of our companies fall within this range. You know, we have some that maybe are older and more developed, and some that are maybe newer. That's kind of the typical application. I think if you're feeling you're too early to apply, don't be afraid to apply. You know, we can filter you, and it'll kind of keep you looped in our marketing, and kind of we'll have a sense of who you are. And if you feel like you're a little too late stage, you know, don't be afraid to apply as well. I mean, we will kind of filter through every application. What's happening during the 6-month-long program? You know, again, with that long-term goal being how do you raise $2 to $5 million? I would break the program up into 3 major parts. Kind of the first 6 weeks is where we really kind of help our teams meet their key advisors. We'll kind of train these teams with a lot of really hands-on programming from Silicon Valley experts, kind of in a variety of aspects of, what is entrepreneurship. And, I think our new investors, our new entrepreneurs always get a lot out of this. Our second and third time entrepreneurs, I think, still get a lot of value out of this as well. So we'll pair them up with their 3 equity-free advisors, and then we'll establish some milestones, kind of some strategies around what do you need to do in the next 6 months to fundraise. Typically, it's how do you improve your team, how do you improve your technology, and how do you improve your customer traction within that time period. That's kind of the big things we're focusing on. During that next kind of middle 3 months, I guess I kind of should add, for a lot of startup programs, you're already halfway done at the end of 6 weeks. For us, you're really just getting started. We are probably, I like to think we're the most hands-on accelerator in the world right now. And maybe Iain would be able to shed more light on that, but I've gone through accelerators myself. I used to be a founder, and I don't think anyone really offers exactly what we do in terms of hands-on training and development. That next 3 months, we really focus on leveraging the Berkeley network to hit those milestones. How do we look at our postdocs, our grad students, our undergrads, our MBAs, our alumni to help you hire? Maybe even our advisors could join some of the founding teams. If you need to get in touch with doctors or directors of engineering or heads of restaurants, whatever it's going to be, how do we leverage this large alumni network of 500,000 people to get our teams introductions? And I really like to say, I don't think there's a single company in the world that Berkeley can't, that SkyDeck can't get in front of. If you need someone, if there's somebody you want to get in front of, myself, managed part of the fund, your advisors, the staff, the community is going to help leverage in our network to get you in touch. And if we don't know anybody, we can cold email these people and say, you're a Berkeley alumni. This is Berkeley SkyDeck. Let's help you get in touch with them. And then we'll kind of help our teams kind of navigate some of the technical needs they have. That's the hardware room, the famed hardware room, as we say, where many companies have come through, have gotten funded, maybe needing biotech or lab space will help them with that. Those last 6 weeks that we really focus on is around fundraising. We've established relationships with the top 150 seed firms inside Silicon Valley. Many of them, all of them know SkyDeck. Many of them have invested in SkyDeck companies. They know our thesis, they know the quality that we're pumping out. And we kind of let them pick and choose the companies that they do want to engage with before our demo day. And a lot of our companies will get back-to-back meetings on that process. And then even after demo day, and then there's demo day, which we usually have about 650 angel investors, corporate investors, other VC firms will come to our demo day to hear the company's pitch. So we really do a lot of hands-on training and connections to make sure our companies will meet the right investors. And then even afterwards, sometimes it takes companies 3 months, 6 months, 12 months to raise their next round of funding. If they're kind of still figuring things out, at least that kind of $2 or $5 million round. Many of our companies, if they're not raising that $2 to $5 million, are at least raising angel money kind of within our network and staying alive. We're still really out there to support them. And usually we're pretty hands-on for the next kind of 6 months if they're still kind of figuring out what they need to do. What does SkyDeck really have to offer? I think it's a couple key areas. It's talent, getting you in front of the MBAs, the grad students, the postdocs, the undergrads who can help support your business. Mentorship. I think any of you can kind of look at the SkyDeck advisors page and see what's there. It's world-class people, founders of well-known and famous companies. If there's an expertise you need, there's a SkyDeck advisor who has it. It's operators, executives, investors. It's quite a great group of folks. And then finally, customer development. I really think our secret sauce that we've developed, even since Iain's gone through the program, is just who do you need to get in touch with? We can do that. And we really built out a lot more systems and processes around that. I think at this point, we're reaching out to probably 50, as a staff, we're reaching out to probably 50 to 100 folks on behalf of our companies to try to drive those introductions to potential customers, to experts in the market, to validate the business, kind of whatever that's going to be. I think one of our best case stories, we helped the company go from $2K a month in revenue to $25K a month in revenue really just through in about a 4-month period, really just through our connection. So we really like to drive that market traction because we see that's what gets the investors to invest. You know, I think whenever an investor is maybe skeptical about something, seeing more traction is always something that kind of gets them interested in. So we like to drive towards that kind of success. I think we have a lot of success stories, and you know, Chris is one from our early cohort, and Iain's here now. Chris came through our cohort with an idea to get rid of background noise on phone calls. We helped them hire a COO, really figure out the go-to-market strategy, and then raise a seed round from one of our investors. You know, the list goes on and on. And other highlights from America might be Line Scooters came through our hot test program in 2017, which kind of hit unicorn status maybe a year ago or so. Civi Robotics is an industrial robotics company that's doing quite well. We've really had nearly every major investment firm in the Valley back our teams at some point. But you know, the successes from Europe, from Latin America, from Asia. I don't have an Oceania here, but you know, there's Iain right there. You know, how do we invest? So as I said, a lot of our companies come to us with funds raised. It's not required, but it happens. We always invest $105,000 for 5% of the company, and we help our companies establish a Delaware C Corp. Typically, this is a $105K investment through a safe at a $2.1 million valuation cap. It's an investment instrument. But increasingly, we're seeing companies come to us having already raised at a $4 to $6 million valuation before the program. And in these instances, we're still taking 5% for that investment amount, but we can be clever in how we take common or founder shares. Common versus preferred shares kind of get to that more equitable point. You know, really no one's going through SkyDeck for the money, or maybe no one, you know, I think people like the money, but it's really more about the platform that we have. And that platform, I don't want to call it invaluable, but that platform is quite valuable compared to the money. What are the frequently asked questions we get, and then I'll be done with the presentation. You know, do you need a UC Berkeley connection to join? No, any global founder can apply to this program. And we're going to work to get you the right advisors, mentors, and employees within the Berkeley network to help you succeed. Do we help the transition to the US? Yes, and we help our connector companies to lawyers. We help them find housing, insurance, kind of, we help kind of the founders who've been this before. So it's always a unique challenge, maybe if founders need to figure something out, but we've done it 30, 40 times. Of course, with COVID-19, we've gone virtual for this program, and I think the word I would say is going shockingly well. I mean, I think we're missing out on some of those deep interpersonal connections you get that, you know, Iain has lifelong friends from this program. I have lifelong friends from when I've gone through this program. So, you know, some of that's kind of been a little bit more affected from going virtual, but the mentorship is still there, the connections are still there, the training's still there, the workshops are still there, and we're still seeing a lot of the ROI kind of being driven, even though things are virtually. And you know, our applications for the next program open on July 8th, and you know, interviews are in September. Program starts in late October. I don't know what the US is going to look like then. A lot can change, especially, you know, who knows what's going to happen on November 3rd as well. So I think we're still playing that by ear. And I can't speak directly on behalf of the accelerator here, who's still formulating some of their plans, but I think some ideas would be, you know, it might start virtually in some sense, and maybe as things would look up in 2021, we could see things opening up. I do think America will get more of its act together later this year. We're a little slow on things sometimes. And specifically, I'll say the Bay Area is doing incredibly well. Some of the lowest coronavirus cases in the nation, nowhere near hospital capacity. People here are wearing masks. It's been taken very seriously here. What stage? I think we talked about this. I mean, companies come to us looking to raise mostly seed and sometimes Series A, you know, rounds. We call it $2 to $5 million in funding. Sometimes it's $1 million, sometimes it's 10 or 15 million, but that's kind of our sweet spot. And typically kind of 6 months to 3 years old before the program. And finally, what industries do we accept? I mean, everything. I mean, we've done education technology companies from Russia, satellite companies from Argentina, cell therapy companies from Canada. The list really goes on. I do think we do have an affinity for that kind of something that's deeper technology, something that's a little bit more frontier. It's certainly not all of our companies, but anything kind of enterprise, industrial, deep tech, hardware, robotics, IoT, AI, life science, biotech. Those are things that I think probably 90% of our companies fit in that category. We don't do a ton of consumer. It certainly happens. Most consumer companies come to us probably a little bit later stage, or maybe they have some sort of really cool technology like Iain's company did and still does. And so that's kind of the type of companies that we're looking for. So this could be up your alley. I would really encourage you to apply. We have a large staff go through every application. I never know which founders are going to fall in love with. And so that's something we want to kind of see the folks applying, and we kind of filter through this. And if it's not this time, we definitely have companies that get accepted to us on the second or third time they apply as well. So that's a little bit about us. And I know there's some Q&A, but maybe before we get to that, or maybe while we get to that, maybe Iain wants to describe a little bit more about his journey. Maybe I don't know, maybe a little bit of Q&A now. And I don't know, Iain, what do you think in regards? I'm stop sharing my screen.
Morning, startup guys. I'm at your discretion.
Well, there's a couple of questions that have rolled in. Let me just get that going.
Why don't we get to these questions to start, and then we can have Iain kind of kick things off, and I'm sure more questions will show up.
Okay, so Daryl asks, what's your advice for people that have a not-for-profit or a social good idea that intentionally you don't have an ROI or commercially focused startup?
Yeah, I think that's great to do it. It's not what SkyDeck does. So it's kind of not our focus right now. My advice is I still think there's a lot of great incubators in the world. I think the word accelerator has maybe been a little toyed with. There's probably only, I think, maybe a dozen or so true accelerators in the world right now that are really kind of doing what we're doing. But there's a lot of great incubators and social good programs out there. There's probably a handful in Australia, but look all around the world. I mean, nearly every city in the world right now has an accelerator, and many of them are offering some kinds of funding. So I would kind of look at what's going on in Europe, India, the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. There's a lot of good, other opportunities out there for more socially good oriented companies.
Okay, Dave, Robbie, you want to take the others?
Yeah, there's one here. I'm not good. Apologies, names. I'm just going to read the question. Do the advisors are chosen by the program or the startup? So, e.g., the advisors who you assign that, are they chosen by, for example, Iain, or do you say that the mandate they're going to be on there?
It's a matchmaking process. So typically, I think each of our teams meets with. I think we have 4 sessions where they meet with 8 people each time. So 32 potential advisors. And we do a little bit of curating on who we think could be a good fit kind of ahead of time. So those 32 of our 250 are already catered. So that's kind of the process there. Matchmaking, they each get 3 equity-free advisors, but truly every advisor is open to a conversation and you're able to kind of talk to and access. So if you figure it out a month in, wow, I missed out on this advisor who sounds amazing. All of our Sky advisors are pretty helpful. I know when I went through the program, we only actually had 1 advisor, and I think one of the most helpful advisors to me was not my Sky advisor. So that's typically kind of where we look at from an advisor standpoint.
It really is like a smorgasbord of just incredible people. The people that I had as my advisors were the founder of Guitar Hero, one of the partners at HB Ventures, the head of Singularity University's biotech division. Just incredible people. It was awesome. And there were lots of other people that we got to reach out to that were either part of the network, were advisors, were kind of advising SkyDeck even. It's really like an open, inclusive culture like that where you can just get in touch with people. It's pretty cool.
Awesome.
So is there a one area of like you're really focusing on at the moment, Brian? So if you were to say, if people who aren't watching this stream now or this webinar, are there, you mentioned AI and kind of the biosciences and stuff like that. Is there one area that you're kind of going, do you know what, we really see this as being the future, and I think we should tap these kind of companies on the shoulder?
I think no would probably be the answer to that. I think we are very much, we roll with what comes in, and every cohort looks different. I think if I had to pick one thing, I think we're seeing a lot of growth in right now and we're supporting more of is life science companies, digital health, hospital IT, therapeutics, medical devices, diagnostic tools are definitely something that I think we're seeing more growth in our program through. But, I have a belief that VCs are not experts in innovation. Founders are. And so I think we always say to ourselves, how can we listen to the founders and what are they telling us? I think maybe on the flip side of that, some things I'd say, some challenge I've seen from a lot of global companies and from some Australian companies in the past is just really, what is venture scale, right? Not as what is a $10 million idea or a $20 million idea or $50 million idea. What can be $1 billion company one day? What does $200 million of revenue really look like from a economic standpoint, from a customer development standpoint? And then what ideas are potentially not overdone in the United States? I think some of the biggest maybe challenges we see from good founders in global markets is, doing something that probably is not going to translate well to the US because maybe it's too consumer, it's been done before, or maybe the market size is just too small. So that's probably one of the alternatives I would say on that. And that's a challenge for any entrepreneur. Kind of something to think about there.
So I've got a question. Again, these questions are coming from me personally because I've Iain, this is a question to you. Has SkyDeck helped you, like being in the Valley, and can you run us through what that experience is like? Obviously, you and I went through the Plus Plus Eight Accelerator together. We sat opposite you, watching you with that little chalkboard with the pivots or the things, and now you're in Silicon Valley. So like for you, can you just run through what that journey's been like for the last 2 years and
Sure.
what you've got out of it?
Can I take like 3 or 4 minutes to give this answer?
As long as you like.
That's probably a good segue into your section.
Half an hour it is. Half an hour it is. Yeah, so just as a little bit of background, so Humm started as an idea among 4 people in Perth who were either just finishing university or just about to, or had just finished. Tim, Ahmed, myself, and Chris all started Humm around the idea, which was a pretty scientific idea. It was something that followed on from some research that Tim was involved in at the Harry Perkins Institute, which is right next to UWA, doing stimulation of the brain using electric signals or magnetic signals to change what's going on inside the brain and cause changes in people's physical experience of life, whether it be like controlling their muscles, all the way to like emotions and thoughts and cognitive improvement and things like that. Learning speed is what Humm does. It was about a 7-year journey from being involved in Tim's research as a participant to deciding that we would actually start the business. We were all at various stages of graduating and graduated and got together and said, right, actually, we think this idea has some legs. We can see a gap in the market that comes out of some pretty interesting science that we don't think is well commercialized yet. We're going to give it a crack. That is about as vague as it was when we first started at the end of 2016. We got involved in the ecosystem around Spacecubed and just generally in the Perth innovation ecosystem to go to hackathons to start learning about how to run a startup. We were all law student, medicine student, engineering students. We had no idea how to run a startup. We were 22 to 20. We're a lot older now. And really just got like positive feedback from people, negative feedback from people, and learnt the basics. Started looking at the right materials and stuff like that. But it really was a 7-year process of learning and trying things and talking to people before we decided that we would actually start a business. And the real impetus to start the business actually came out of an awesome opportunity that we got through Spacecubed, again, in collaboration with a group called Muridi, which was Telstra's innovation division that spun out into an accelerator. We applied for the Plus 8 thing. It was starting in Perth, the Plus 8 Accelerator, which was Spacecubed and Muridi. We got stuck into that alongside your company, Dave, and a couple of other companies, some of which are still with us and some of which are either very different to the companies that they were at the time or have wrapped up, as is common among startups, right? It was a 6-month program. We got a very tiny amount of investment to start off relative to how much all this stuff that we're doing at Humm costs. We got about 40,000 Australian dollars. We met a whole bunch of angels. We learned the basics. We pivoted multiple times. We came to the States. We met the scientists who did the science, the scientists all over the country who did the science that we were interested in. And we finished the accelerator. Then we raised a little bit more money from some of the angels that we had met, who we made the commitment to that we would all quit our jobs in law, medicine, engineering, etc., and actually pursue this full time. And then it was about 3 months later that SkyDeck actually reached out to us. One of the things that they're fantastic at SkyDeck is communication. You can contact people in the very top of SkyDeck and they'll reply to you straight away, which I think is awesome and really rare. We had visited Berkeley, meeting a couple of the scientists here and at UCSF over the bay, where the lab is that we work with now, but had really only considered it academically and as a beautiful place. But all of a sudden we realized that actually this place that's just a tiny little bit over the bay from San Francisco, the downtown city, right in the middle of this Silicon Valley ecosystem, which had all of the investors that were interested in the technology we were working with, massive amount of the science, a lot of the customers that could be our early adopters. There was just this awesome opportunity, and the Berkeley ecosystem, Brian in particular, and the other people at SkyDeck as well, are just really awesome at helping companies, being generous, wanting to do good things for the world as well as make money, etc. And so we came into this kind of love affair with SkyDeck, and we're set on coming over and applying. And we flew over. We showed up to our interview. You can do them overseas or you can do them in person. I would recommend in person if you can. We spent some of our own personal money getting on those flights and coming over here. We took a gamble, and we eventually got through into the SkyDeck program.
Iain, what about the blue bottle coffee? You forgot about that? I'm just kidding.
Yeah, Brian bought me an expensive coffee. He also gave me a tour of Berkeley. You know, you fly over from Australia and the guy running the fund walks you around the campus. It says something about the place and the people that you're dealing with. And we loved it. We got in, we moved over here. Some of us made some big personal sacrifices, deferring relationships, saying goodbye to wives for a short period of time, etc., not knowing what was going on. But we landed, we found some temporary accommodation that was terrible. Brian helped me find a really good place. We started meeting all these incredible advisors that I just mentioned. SkyDeck put some more money into us. We raised some more money from the Australian investors that were backing us in conjunction with that money from Berkeley. And then basically the story is 12 months later, we had graduated the SkyDeck Accelerator. We raised our seed round from some investors that we'd been talking to for a while that we met through the network, through the SkyDeck network. And we got stuck in. And along the way, our company has pivoted a couple of times. The fundamental technology remains the same, but the network's changed massively. The business that we're building in terms of how we're doing the first steps of commercialization has changed quite a bit. And Berkeley SkyDeck has been like a really pivotal part of that, allowing us to have the network to do that agile learning process, providing the information. The resources are obviously really important. So yeah, Berkeley SkyDeck was a massive help. Probably the most transformational experience of my life. As cliche as that may sound, it's hard moving countries, and having this great support network and all these people who are really smart, know what they're doing, and can give you money and support is incredibly valuable. Companies changed a lot. The team looks pretty different these days. The business is pretty different, but one thing we're never going to do is run away from SkyDeck. Is there anything that I missed out? So the process for the 6 months was like, it's pretty light touch. They're not forcing information down your throat. It is this thing where you can come in, you can meet people. You do get some opportunities to do things like go to fireside chats with, say, like the founder of Xiaomi or head of Mayfield Capital. You know, these incredible opportunities to have FaceTime with people you never otherwise meet. But really, otherwise, it's pretty custom to your company. And so for my company, we actually pivoted towards the end of the SkyDeck Accelerator. We were focusing on esports as a commercialization market, somewhere where computer gamers would use our technology to beat other computer gamers, basically, in like a professional sporting setting. But through the help and advice of SkyDeck, Brian and John, who he works with, and a couple other people on the team, as well as just being pushed to continue pushing our business forward and get investors' feedback and customers' feedback, we decided to pivot towards what we do today, which is helping kind of a broader group of people who are doing white-collar professional work with our technology to learn things faster and work better. And then at the demo day, the last day of SkyDeck, you get this opportunity to stand in front of all of the top investors in Silicon Valley and many of the incredible angels who've built like transformational businesses themselves, and get their direct feedback, personal connections with them, have them listen to something about your business for 5 minutes. And then when you graduate, it doesn't stop there. I mean, I'm part of the SkyDeck alumni now. I go to all of the alumni reunions. I go to casual catch-up events where you have a beer with a couple of founders and cry into your beer a little bit, as well as the more fun events. Like I go back to the demo days and get to meet investors again, and get to hang out with Brian and get John's advice. And Brian's come along to our board meetings before, those kinds of things. So I could probably talk all day, but I'll leave it there and we'll take some more questions, I guess, eh?
Super useful. Yeah, no, thank you. So there's a question here from anonymous. Iain, what would you say get your company what would you say to get your company selected onto the SkyDeck program? So is there anything specific you think you would recommend doing to kind of increase your chances?
Yeah. I think be honest, accept the reality that maybe you're not a fit for the SkyDeck program. There are other programs and stuff too, but if you're going to try and like make up crap to get in, you're only going to end up in a bad spot. These guys are incredibly smart. They're very sharp-witted. They have a lot of experts on the review panel. So once you pitch, they'll ask you questions. Some of those questions are terrifying. Just tell the truth. Tell the truth about your business. Get that really valuable feedback from them as a result, which is incredibly valuable. To have so many smart people give you advice on your business and ask the right questions and shift your thinking. That'd be my main bit of advice. I think that's basically what we did at Humm. But be confident, sell yourself, particularly as Australians. We tend to want to not be too aggressive, but over here the style is just much more forthright. A lot of people pitching all the time, you just build up this tolerance for people being salesy, and it becomes more expected, and being underconfident is not a good thing, but being honest always. I should add one thing that I really wanted to say on this call, just that you may not necessarily be you don't necessarily have to move to San Francisco, obviously, to start a business, right? My business did need to move to San Francisco because our science is here. A lot of the customers who demand our technology, which is a really niche early technology that needs a certain kind of customer, they're here. A lot of the investors who invest in crazy stuff, moonshots like what Humm is, are here. So, there are different businesses have different places they should be. I miss my family in Perth and wish I could spend half my year there, of course. It's a great place. Berkeley is an amazing bridge for me, and I think a great thing for my business, but yeah, maybe don't apply for SkyDeck unless it's the right thing for your business. There you go.
So have you found you as a founder has changed? So from when you starting the journey to where you are now, do you feel personally like you've changed on that journey? What characteristics would you have said you've kind of brought on board as through going through it?
Yeah, I think one of the best things that accelerators will do for you is they really push you to be under pressure. It's something that more successful entrepreneurs seek, but is nonetheless really difficult for everyone to constantly push yourself out of your comfort zone. And I think that having gone through 2 accelerators now, both of which were incredibly valuable experiences, the Plus 8 Accelerator from Spacecubed in Perth, and then the SkyDeck Accelerator, I have really been forced to make a lot of changes in my life, both personally and professionally, learn a lot of new things that I was incredibly uncomfortable with. And honestly, I rate the value of an opportunity and an experience by how much it feels uncomfortable like that these days. So I guess whereas previously I was on a path to be a professional, I was running a couple of little businesses and things like that. It's really pushed me to expand my ambitions and be more comfortable being uncomfortable, I guess, is the big difference between me 3 years ago and now.
Nice. So this is probably one for Brian. So a question from Brendan: is it a runner to keep headquarters here in Perth and find a co-founder to sit in Silicon Valley and drive the whole US business? And the key reason for that question is that Perth is obviously in the same time zone as Singapore, China, and Southeast Asia. So there's advantages to being here as well.
I think it depends on the business and the models we've seen. I mean, I like to think from many of our companies, it's a very symbiotic relationship, depending on what type of company you're doing. We generally encourage our companies don't hire engineers in Silicon Valley. They're really expensive. and you can find very good engineers other places in the world. I think it's just kind of, what are you trying to get out of Silicon Valley? And I say there's probably three big things. One is just the gravitas of it all, just like the culture that really pushes you to succeed and pushes you to think about bigger businesses. And I think for the program, we really make sure our founders are here mostly full-time for that. The first 6 weeks when they're getting trained, the last 6 weeks when they're fundraising, they're there, probably the CEO is there full-time and maybe another co-founder or two. In between, I think there might be some travel back and forth. But we do encourage our companies also to hire someone full-time out here. Especially that CEO is going to be more technical, maybe having to manage their lab back in their home market. So don't have a clear answer on that. I think the more time you spend here, especially as a CEO, the more advantage you're going to get out of the business development network here, out of the thinking bigger, out of the investors out here. And I also think something I always say on my first day of SkyDeck is, there's a serendipity of Silicon Valley that is just indescribable. You never know when you're going to be sitting in an Uber pool with, a Bitcoin, multi-millionaire who can, invest in your next company. You never know when SkyDeck's going to have, with one day's notice, the head of energy for Switzerland come in. And if you're not there at that time, well, you might have just missed an amazing opportunity for business development or for connections. And so I think that's just something that's really hard to express, because there's so much density in innovation here, because the world maybe sees us as a leader in innovation, and there's just constantly corporations flying here, executives flying here, investors flying here, and a lot of them now are seeing SkyDeck as a key point they have to hit. I think kind of coming here and looking at the market looking at this place is important. But I do see it as symbiotic, in terms of what our companies have to be looking for. So yeah, I think each company maybe does it a little bit differently, but I think many of the most successful companies, the CEOs are moving here full time, and the maybe the product engineering teams are back in the home market. But this is kind of where they want to go to market, raise money, and such.
Okay, cool. So it's not a deal breaker if you are here in Perth, but yeah.
No, I mean, it would be for the program. If it would be a deal breaker, like you have to be here probably 85% of the time.
Right.
Albeit COVID-19 has changed things. And then after the program, I mean, like it is, we're your investor, we're not your bosses. Like we can't force you to do anything, right? Once you get the money, it's the money. And then after the program, maybe there's a transition period, but people who are coming through our program are looking to become typically a Silicon Valley company.
Right. Okay, cool. Well, we've got no more open questions in the Q&A section.
There was one from another anonymous, which was, how secure the program in terms of business plans, ideas? What's the worst scenario if the startup fail or success? And what's going to happen when your startup runs well? I have no idea what you're actually asking there. So I've typed back to you, say, could you clarify that for me, please? Iain, any last final words of advice to anybody who wishing to apply?
Be fun. One thing that I think a lot of startup founders are is stressed out, and it's very difficult to stop and separate you from your business and make friends. And I think one thing that really helped was that us get the value out of SkyDeck and maybe get into SkyDeck was to become friends with the people who run it and care about them and have them care about us, and the value increase that comes with that. And when I say be fun, I mean add value. Make a situation that you come into better, or at least as good as you come into it. Don't just take and look at things as an opportunity to get value out of other people, but contribute back. And one of the best things you can do is make everyone's lives a little bit more enjoyable. Be fun.
Love it.
Wise words.
One question from me, actually, Iain. So one thing in Perth, obviously, we love founders going and learning and doing all this stuff in Silicon Valley and building their unicorn. But what we really need is for people to move back to Perth one day and help spread the knowledge and hopefully the funding and all of that. Is that, just to put you totally on the spot, what are your plans for the future?
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard growing up in Perth and thinking about living anywhere else in the long term. It's just such an incredible place with so much going for it. San Francisco is very expensive in the long term, you know, and like you always look back at Perth and remember the incredible things. I believe what I think Charlie Bass, Perth entrepreneur, said a couple of years ago in his TEDx talk. When the acorn drops from the tree, the roots are still in Perth, you know, and all my family in Perth, it's not like I'm ever going to be disconnected from Perth. I try to contribute back to like the UWA and general innovation culture and just youth innovation culture as much as I can. And I think that like it is just impossible for Perth to grow without outside perspectives. So it's a good thing for my company to the left, and I'm definitely not separated from Perth. Whether I move back there in the next 5 years or not, I don't know, but I'd say it's pretty damn likely I'll at least die in Perth. Let's put it that way.
We will still claim Humm as ours, though. Sorry, Brian, but we will still claim Humm as a Perth-based company. You know, a bit like we still claim Canva is one of ours. Now Canva is like the richest or the most. I think it's the highest valued Australian tech company now. Yesterday with that 6 billion valuation. So
I mean, a little bit on that note. I mean, as we think about how the valley developed, right? It's not like it develops like this. It develops like boom, boom. It's every time there's an exit from these founders. You know what happens? The founders become investors or VCs. The early employees become angels or co-founders again. And it really builds that ecosystem. I think we really see development of global ecosystems as key to our long-term model, and we see our goal is for this to be very symbiotic. You know, if the money can come here, like we have a team from let's take it Armenia. The CEO is split this time, hired a COO out here, and they hired 24 engineers in Armenia to build their product. And you know, those folks are now going off and starting a new company. Same with Colombia. We you know, had a team here, had 20 engineers in Colombia. And so I do think we are seeing some of this knowledge transferring happen, and really hope we can find some more symbiotic relationships with great ecosystems out there.
yeah.
And I just want to add one thing, which is I don't think that Humm would actually exist anymore after these 3 or something years that we've been doing this if it didn't come from Perth. I think we actually, whereas a couple of other companies in our industry have got stuck on being like overly ambitious and overselling or etc. Humm's actually come from Perth, and we're a pretty humble group, pretty honest. And our technology being such a frontier, cutting edge technology, you know, the examples that often come up in people's heads are when you make these big claims about you can change the brain with electricity, you know, people think of Theranos and things like that, right? And I think we have been very forthright, very humble, and a lot of people have wanted to help us as a result, because they believe in the potential of our technology and that we're doing it for the right reasons. And so, you know, being from Perth was a massive benefit for Humm. And I'm sure that there are great companies to come from Perth to join SkyDeck and other parts of the world too. So yeah, good luck everyone.
Can I ask you just a question, Iain? I grew up in a culture in Ireland where the tech sector and the innovation sector was sexy and had a wider appeal to a lot of young people in terms of coming up and deciding where they wanted to, you know, how they want to develop professionally, what kind of third level education they wanted to pursue, and so on. Coming to Perth, obviously there's people who are in the tech sector who love the startup scene, who are really interested in innovation and so on, but it seems to be missing out from the wider public. How do we, you know, in Silicon Valley, obviously in Berkeley and so on, it's the same as in Ireland. It has an allure, it has a something about it that draws people in. Like, how do we create that culture here in Perth, do you think?
Yeah, I think I've seen some interesting signs that have given me some encouragement, but I think the big thing that there's a problem, I think everyone will have a different answer to this question. I'm at a early stage in my learning as an entrepreneur too, so take everything I say with a grain of salt, but this is what my perspective is. I think the big problem that was with my growth in Perth, and I think a lot of people in Perth, is being uncomfortable with failure. I think that the certainty of this professional career that we have when we grow up in Perth is very strong and alluring in itself. And you know, it's a great place to have hobbies like surfing and riding a bike and beautiful nature and stuff like that. So there's a lot of distractions, but and those things aren't necessarily illegitimate. But if you're gonna make rapid progress and be able to learn hard technologies and create billion-dollar businesses like Brian says, you're going to have to fail a lot. You know, the stories of these famous technology entrepreneurs like Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg, they might sound glamorous, but you look at them closely and you actually see that they're just like consistent iteration cycle based on fail, but growth. And growing up in Perth, it didn't occur to me that I could be a tech entrepreneur because I just didn't think I was smart enough. I thought I would screw it up. I didn't know all of these things that I needed to know, and I was like, I can't do that. I'm just going to fail. I'm just going to struggle. I'm not part of that world. If you grow up in San Francisco, you're so comfortable with failure comparatively. And I think it's one of the biggest differences in mindset that gives this place an advantage in the technology industry. Just being comfortable taking on things you don't yet fully understand, confident, looking for mentors and doing it step by step, failing every now and then, but keep picking yourself up and trying again. If we could bring that to Perth and just make kids and university students and young people of my age, even I'm 28, more comfortable taking risks, trying things for the first time they're not familiar with, I think we'd actually punch way above our weight. And right now, I think we're punching a little bit under our weight. So thankfully, we have groups like Spacecubed and Morning Startup to actually, give us the chance to talk about this stuff and make some progress and some support. Yeah.
Completely agree. No, good question, Robbie. No, completely agree. I think the sooner we say it's acceptable to fail, the faster we'll grow as a community. Anyway, on that, we're at 20 to the hour. I'd like to massively thank Brian and Iain for taking the time out of their day. You're just coming to the end, so have a beer on us.
Beer o'clock.
We'll have a coffee. No, we look forward to hearing more. Brian, we'll send out the details on how people can apply to us. Any final last words before we close?
Yeah, I mean, those applications open on July 8th, and we'll definitely kind of share information out there. And yeah, I mean, I think SkyDeck is really actively looking for our next Australian team to back. We got close to the couple last time. So it's on our mind, and we, don't just love Australian teams for the products building, but I think who they are, and they really add a lot to our program. So thank you so much for your taking the time and showcasing SkyDeck here.
Brilliant. Thank you, everybody. Just the one last thing before we go. Obviously, the poll was there. Those who haven't entered the poll, do it so now. But if we look at it now, do you think your business would be better off in San Francisco? 58% said yes. Oh, it's now quickly changing. It's changing as we talk. 56% still said yes. 44% said no. That's quite surprising. And has your view changed since watching this presentation? And the majority say no. So yeah, that's an interesting one. 60-40 in favor of yes. Think they would be better off in San Francisco. So
can I add a couple of things just quickly, David? Which is just that, first of all, if you want a taste of Silicon Valley and Berkeley in particular, my house is open to anyone from Perth. Have a house where you can sleep on a mattress on the floor. It's not glamorous, but come and do it. You'll love it. I can show you around SkyDeck and all of Silicon Valley. Secondly, my email is always open, Iain@thinkhumm. Anyone from Australia with startup problems or who wants to network over here, reach out, but particularly people from Perth. And even if you have young people that you know who want to learn about this stuff and just want to talk, I'm always available. So please.
That's an amazing offer. Thanks, Iain.
Right, and on that note, I'm going to hit the end button. And
before you do, I just want to mention in 2 weeks' time, so we will be back at Riff, and we've got Bruce Wadinsky, who's an amazing Perth-based developer. He's been involved in so many app rescue projects. It's just ridiculous. So with startups, especially non-technical founders, they go to an app development company to get their idea off the ground. And we've all heard the horror stories. There are just so many of them of app developments gone wrong. So Bruce is going to tell us a bit about what he's learned and how you can potentially avoid those disasters if you are reaching out to a third-party development shop.
Yeah.
So yeah, please join us.
Get back to this place. So yes, it's been too long. It's been way too long. So anyway, on that note, I'm going to hit the big red button. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Iain. It's been a pleasure. Take care, everyone. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.